Hi, my name is Tara Vasovich in Dr. Auter's Communication 307 Summer Intersession class. And this is going to be a PowerPoint presentation on how to brand an organization. Think about this. The only thing that's worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. In the same way that music, food, and lifestyles can define cities, an organization's brand defines its values, benefits, and value propositions. In this sense, establishing your organization's brand is the foundation of any business. In today's presentation, I'm going to be talking about 5 objectives: defining a brand, why having a brand is useful, external and internal implications of brands, ways to create a brand for an organization, and the relationship between consumers and brands. So to be a successful organization, you want to get what you want, which is increased revenue, a reduced price sensitivity, and an increased customer loyalty. In order to do so, you need to establish a strong brand that has functional and emotional values, which create connections with your consumers and your staff and informs individuals on the behavior of your organization. So what is branding? According to the American Marketing Association, branding is a name, term, sign, symbol, or design, or a combination of them intended to identify the goods and services of one seller or group of sellers and to differentiate them from those of other sellers. Hence, a brand is not defined by the product, but it's defined by getting consumers to choose your company over another, whether that be through what you remember of that company, or what memory you have with that certain product, or what kind of emotional attachment you have to the product or service. So the importance of branding. And branding is important because it expresses what an organization is and what it can offer. It also positions a product. It relays an organization's mission as well as the vision. According to an article posted in the New York Times that was written by allbusiness.com, a brand is a kind of promise. It is a set of fundamental principles that's understood by anyone who comes into contact with the company. This is very different than a lot of the definitions that we hear or that we think of as a brand as just an image or a logo design. So let's get into a little bit more detail of what a brand is. Like I said, a brand is more than just a logo. It's the company's face to the world. It's involved and it's composed of a name, usually a logo, a communication strategy, and how it is perceived by customers. So what is your identity is the first question that a brand needs to ask itself when it's developing a brand image. According to Scott M. Davis, image and perception help drive value. Without an image, there is no perception. This goes to say that if an organization does not have an image that it wants to exude to the public or the target audience has no way to perceive that organization. There are 3 simple steps in brand identity, which I will talk about further. But for now, let's just think about it as these 3 simple steps. They are research, strategy, and visual identity. An organization begins with research, then implements a strategy, and then creates a visual identity. But why does it help to have a brand? Well, having a brand incites brand awareness, customer loyalty, differentiation, and it also fuels business growth, which we will get into later. A great brand is extremely powerful, and it's measured by certain objectives. An organization, to have an effective brand, must have effective internal communications, must have efficient training on brand promise, and it should adjust its company policies to better serve the brand image. Great brands have two essential basics. They have an active, enthusiastic set of employees that work for the organization who also live its values. This goes to say, sort of like the saying, you are what you eat. An organization is what it lives. If it lives the values that it's projecting onto its internal and external values and audiences, it's becoming a great brand. Brand image and organization's performance is also very important. If you have favorable employees, opinions, attitudes, and beliefs, you will create a corporate image that's positive and a great brand image that will improve your organizational performance. Brands also need to come into life with its customers to fuel business growth, like I previously mentioned. Internally, the organization needs to be aligned for the brand image to be projected positively. It needs to be aligned with its culture, its reward systems, its activities, and its structure. There are two different types of branding in an organization. Like I previously mentioned, there's your external culture and your internal culture that needs to be branded. Your external branding consists of the consumers, the target audiences, the publics, and the stakeholders that are all external to your organization. Your internal branding includes your employees, your managers, and the workforce. I'm going to talk now a little bit more about your internal branding. Why would you implement internal branding? Well, it adds value to the organization. Branding within an organization, internal branding, like I said, is involved in employment branding and making sure that your employment actually is a brand in itself. I'll now be talking about how to brand your workplace and how to position your employment brands. So an internal employment brand is a perception of your organization to its employees. It's, what employees think about your brand and how they perceive it. If you have an internal brand, an effective internal brand, you'll be able as an organization to help attract talent, retain employees, and enhance your brand. To promote an internal brand, you can promote employee awards, you can implement a positive workforce, you should publish achievements on company websites, and promote work-life balance with employees. This all makes sure that you have a positive environment in your internal public. Now I'm going to be talking about external branding, which is something that we are all extremely familiar with. As you can see in the diagram, there are millions and millions and millions of brands that we deal with on a daily basis. To have a good external branding, you need to have a clarified purpose. You should have a visual representation that you will present to your audience. And you should try to figure out what you want your audience to associate with your brand and its image. There are many forms of external branding. Logo designs, slogans, personal associations, and even web branding. Some examples are McDonald's, I'm loving it, the I am an Iams dog campaign, some social media campaigns that go along with companies, as well as their RSS feeds, which I will get into later. So how do consumers differentiate their products? Well, brands help establish this. If you have a brand, it helps establish your loyalty and your trust with your consumers. It also determines which service the consumers will purchase, and it becomes a part of their lifestyles. There's a lot of development in new technologies when it comes to branding. Stuff that doesn't just involve the typical slogans and logos that we are all familiar with. New additions of web-based branding, including RSS feeds, are a new addition to organizational culture. RSS feeds communicate important information in real time to clients and consumers. able to easily update external publics with specific feeds. Brand identity in retaining customers is also extremely important. The process of branding includes integration, planning, and strategic focus, which all has positive effects on customers. Now I'll be talking a little bit about the strategic methods of developing a brand and the 3 simple steps that you can take to implement a brand image on an organization. Step 1 is to synchronize personality, values, and corporate culture. You should understand the internal and external perceptions of your organization before beginning any other step in this branding process. You need to determine your corporate culture and you want to clarify your brand's characteristics. In this step, you will be working closely with the HR department and you should be redefining your missions and vision statements as needed. Step 2 is to get employees behind your brand. Remember, if your employees don't buy in with your brand image, nobody else will. In this step, you'd want to align your criteria, figure out what represents your brand promise, and develop positioning statements that can be implemented through all levels of an organization. Training also happens in this step as you want your employees to become more familiar with what you want your brand to serve as. The last step is to reinforce and repeat. In this step, you will be explaining more in depth the values and behaviors that reflect your brand promise to your employees. You want to do this almost excessively so that it becomes a second nature. You would also want to have continuous feedback loops using your staff as a focus group to figure out what is working and what isn't. I'm going to now talk about an example that really encompasses the 3 steps to developing a brand quite well. It's a real-life relationship between an organization and its clients, and the experience the British Gas Company had in making a new logo. Recently, the British Gas logo was updated by the company CHI and Partners. So following this new brand logo development, the Journal of Creative Review asked the head of the art department at CHI, his name's Dan Beckett, and the chairman, Wally Ollins, to discuss their interpretations on what they called the brand identity turf war, which may sound a little intimidating. Well, Ollie Ollins, who's the chairman, states that in this day and age, especially, the relationship a client has with an organization doesn't so much depend on what the organization does, but how close the relationship is. Building an effective brand image, and specifically logo, is extremely important, and it is why companies such as British Gas are now turning to specific brand consultants for success, rather than just relying on ad agencies. This really signals a move that organizations are taking their brand image extremely seriously, and they feel that it is the most important aspect of their brand. So in conclusion, what information have we retained? Well, I defined what a brand was. We helped determine the success of brand images and certain methods. We differentiated between internal and external branding and how each of them hold importance in an organization. We talked about how to brand an organization effectively. And finally, we talked about the relationship between consumers and brands. I hope you have learned something exciting about how to determine and how to create a brand for your organization, and I'd like to thank you again for watching.